Good morning. For this week's Lenten craft, I wanted to show you some watercolors. Watercolors are a pretty easy medium to work with, but they can be a little messy and frustrating. What you're going to need, or what you might want, is a palette of watercolors. These work by just putting a little bit of water in each of the dishes, and so that you can have that soak in and get the watercolor part. If you don't have access to that, but you have a lot of dead markers, you can put the dead markers in some water. I've got some yellow going here, and I've got some reds and pinks in this one, and it will create a watercolor for you. So I'm going to be using these for one of the projects, and I'll be using the palette for the other one. I want to talk to you about resist water painting. The Bible tells us Jesus resisted temptation. It tells us our sins were as scarlet, but he made them white as snow. That's because he's pure. For this project, it's actually a two-step project. So I did the first step. The first step is just to do a wash of color. You want this lighter. And what you're going to do once this dries, I didn't want the video to have to wait for it. You're going to take some tape. Blue painter's tape works the best because you can stick that on your paper and it will unstick relatively easily. So I'm just going to make a cross right there with my blue tape, okay? When the second layer is dry, you pull this off, and that what leaves the shape here in the middle. The second form of resist, you will need a white or very light crayon. And what I'm gonna do for this one is I am just going to draw a cross. This one's gonna be fairly messy because that's the kind of cross that I want. I want to be able to see what will look like the wood grain once I put the paint on top of it. All right, so paintbrush, paint, paper. The Bible tells us when Jesus was crucified that the sky turned dark. So I'm going to be using dark colors here to go over the cross. This palette doesn't have black in it, or I would use some of that. And that was just one of the phenomenons that happened that made his crucifixion a little more unique. When he was crucified, it says in the temple, the curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the rest of it tore in two. There was earthquakes, there was that eclipse where the sky turned dark. It sounds like a pretty scary time. And a lot of this is prophesied in the book of Isaiah. So that's kind of neat that God knew way in advance the type of death Jesus would have to suffer. He knew what it would cost for our freedom, our salvation. So right here, you can see I'm just doing darker colors. I'm using mostly purple and brown and a little bit of blue to do a darker wash over the top of my light wash. And you can experiment with the types of colors that you have. The more water you use in it, the lighter the color will be. And the less water you use, the darker it'll be. I'm going to draw the other two crosses here in the background. They were all probably the same size, but we always tend to emphasize Jesus's cross a little bit more. But remember, he was crucified with two other criminals, and they were actually criminals. On the cross, Jesus forgave them their sins, at least the one who said, hey, we deserve to be up here. This guy does not. So they were even able to recognize Jesus's holiness and power while they were being crucified next to him. Okay, a little bit more blue up here. And you can work on this until you are happy with the results. Art is art. There's no wrong way to do it. And I think I didn't mention, you're gonna want a dish of clear water so you can rinse your brush off. Particularly helpful if you go to a different shade or a lighter color, all right? And on here, you can see I wasn't too neat. I painted right over the tape. But that's because I know I'm gonna take this tape off and reveal the cross underneath. You can see on the edges where it wasn't, the tape wasn't pushed down quite hard enough and some of it bled through, but that's okay. I like it. And that's all that matters about your art, is that you like it. I told you we had two types of resist. So the plastic part of the tape, it sticks to your paper and the water rubs right off of this. It doesn't soak through to your paper below. The wax in your crayon will do the same thing. And here I'm gonna use our homemade watercolor paints with all of my markers that were not working. You may or may not have a few markers around your house that just are faded and you're ready to throw out. Stick them in some water and make, some watercolor paint. All right. So my brush is clean and I'm going to paint over this, and you can start to see where I have the crayon marks. The crayon, the wax in there is resisting the paint, and we want to remember to resist temptation, resist the evil one. While Jesus was walking here on earth with us, he was able to lead a holy and perfect life. He was the Son of God. So he may have had a little advantage in that, but he still had to deal with being human and having feelings and a body that needed rest and sleep. And I'm drawing my brush out on this one because I know the watercolor is a lot more liquid than it was when I was using the painting palette. But I'm going to do a little bit of yellow here at the bottom. Kind of want to make it look like a sunrise, and the yellow, as expected, does not show off the white of the cross very well, so I'm going to go and blend some more red into that. All right. Okay. Go ahead. I should have had a cloth with me. I want to dampen some of that. Do not use your clothes. Your parents will not appreciate that. A little bit more of the red, the dark up here, and I might add some more of the brown from this other palette. The Bible tells us that our sins, the things we've done wrong, are like scarlet. That's a very fancy word for red. Think of a deep, dark blood red. But Jesus' sacrifice as the sacrificial lamb at Passover makes us white as snow. So there you go. 2 Lenten projects. This video's gone on fairly long, but I hope you enjoy being creative this week. And let me see some of your artwork, see how it turns out. I'll talk to you later. Bye.